How are we doing, everyone? It has been too long since we've been able to see a Bulls game, but the Bulls are finally going to be back in action tomorrow against the Hawks at the United Center following the All-Star break. I'll, of course, have a live game chat for that, but in the meantime, you know today is Wednesday, and every Wednesday I feature a series between your Bulls hot takes and your Would You Rather scenarios, and this week we're going to be going over your hot takes as we receive some good ones this time around. So if you're new to the channel, be sure to leave your hot takes below in the comments or in the Discord. A link to the Discord can be found in the description. So with that said, let's get into these takes, shall we? So what's going on, everyone? You're listening to Bulls Central here. Hope you're all doing well. Our first take comes to us from M. Makisua. Lakers missed the playoffs and AD wants out and to go to Chicago, his hometown, completing the Bulls super team as their power forward. Now, I don't doubt, and I wouldn't be shocked if Anthony Davis or even the Lakers look to try to move him this offseason. Like, I really could see either party, between either the franchise or Anthony Davis himself, wanting out of the organization, because things in LA are just a mess right now with the Lakers. Like, yes, they won an asterisk of a title in the bubble, but they mortgaged their entire future on trading for Anthony Davis. And the dude just can't stay healthy. Like, LeBron is going to be retiring soon. Westbrook is on the decline. They traded away most of their draft capital and young players to get Anthony Davis. Like, the future of that franchise is not good. And you'd have to think, if they want any semblance of building for the future, that they would need to consider moving Anthony Davis. That being said, though, this is going to be similar to a Ben Simmons situation. Not that Anthony Davis is pulling a Ben Simmons type move, but more so, if Anthony Davis is unhappy and wants out, the Lakers are going to want maximum value in return for him. Like, they probably are going to want way more than Anthony Davis is worth, because in their view, AD is still a top 10 player in the league, an all-star and all-NBA caliber level player. Whether that's true or not is besides the point, but that's how they're going to be viewing it if they are going to want to make a trade. They're going to want that level of return. Now, again, I think the question is, if Anthony Davis does in fact want a trade or demands a trade, is it even worth trading a ton of assets for the Bulls to try to get Anthony Davis, a guy who can't stay healthy? Even when he has been healthy this season, he hasn't really been that great relative to his contract anyway, and he's under contract until 2025, by which point he'll be making over $40 million at the age of 31. Like, do you even want to risk making a move like that for a guy who is trending to be a player that may possibly decline early in his career? And aside from all of that, who are you even going to make a trade for to get him? Again, the Lakers are going, or they're not going to want to just give him away for nothing. They're likely going to want a package centered around a guy like Zach LaVine and some young pieces and draft capital, which the Bulls just don't have. I just don't think it would make sense for the Bulls. You don't want to disrupt the chemistry this team has been able to develop for an injury-prone player that is on a max contract, that you would need to give up big pieces of your core in order to get him. Next, we've got Cy. Troy Brown Jr. is not a bad player, and the Bulls should re-sign him next season, not sign and trade him. He is going to be similar to Marcus Smart in his prime, in my opinion. He just needs time to develop. I mean, if you had made this take last season, I would have somewhat agreed with you, because I actually saw a lot of potential in Troy Brown Jr. after we made that trade for him and before he got injured last season at the deadline, but he really has underwhelmed this season. Yes, he's had a few good games here and there, but for the most part, he's been kind of a disappointment this year. Like, I thought he was going to be a key rotational player for the Bulls this season, and when the Bulls were fully healthy, he was barely even able to crack the rotation. And now he's been given more opportunity with guys being bought out, he still hasn't shown up that well. Yes, he's good defensively, he is only 22, so you're right in the sense that there is some development left to be made, but I really don't see him being a Marcus Smart level player, which, I mean, isn't that great anyway, and I can't see the Bulls extending him this offseason. Next, we've got J-Dog. Cat will become a Bull in 2023-24, replacing Vucevic. So I had a feeling I would be getting some of these types of takes, especially based on the video I put out yesterday in which I talked about what are the Bulls going to do with Vucevic's contract, which is set to expire in 2023. Now, of course, you've had a ton of people talk about Nikola Jokic, whose contract also expires at the same time as Vucevic in 2023. So naturally, there is this speculation that the Bulls are going to go all in on Jokic because he's one of the best players in the league and because of the history that he has with AK. But I always say, yeah, the Bulls and every other team in the NBA is going to be interested in Jokic when he becomes a free agent in 2023. And you also have to keep in mind that the Nuggets can offer him by far and away the most money with a Supermax extension. But you didn't say Jokic, I know, just myself ranting a bit, but you said Karl Anthony Towns will become a Bull in 2023. And I mentioned I was kind of expecting these types of takes, which there were other similar ones to this as well. And that's because there's a sentiment that given the fact that Zach LaVine and Karl Anthony Towns are really good friends, that LaVine has been recruiting Cat, especially during All-Star Weekend, which, sure, might be the case, but players do that all the time, and you have to remember at the end of the day, it still has to work between both franchises to make something like that happen, because Cat, unlike Jokic and Vucevic, whose contracts both expire in 2023, Karl Anthony Towns is under contract until 2024, so in order for him to join the Bulls in 2023, like you mentioned, it would have to be done via a trade. And by Cat replacing Vucevic, it would essentially need to be done in the form of a sign-and trade by extending Vucevic and trading him to the Timberwolves. But like, why would the Wolves want to do that? Why would they look to trade for Karl Anthony Towns for Vucevic when they're likely wanting to get younger and build around some of their younger guys like Anthony Edwards? Sure, it sounds great for the Bulls, but I can't see the Wolves looking to move on from Cat, especially with how well he's been playing, unless of course Cat demands a trade, which sure I could see happening if the Wolves continue to underperform. But the Wolves are making strides in the right direction in building for their future, and Karl Anthony Towns is likely going to be the franchise cornerstone around that. Next, we've got Jax, and this is a long run, so bear with me. I feel like the Bulls shouldn't have signed Lonzo. As good as Lonzo is, and I think he's better all around at the moment, I feel like we gave up way too early on Coby White. He's younger, getting better every season, and Lonzo hasn't been as good as people are trying to make it seem. He then puts up some numbers between Lonzo and Io to draw some comparisons, so I won't go into that. But I mean, look, what you're saying isn't completely unfounded and has some truth to it. I mean, if you guys have been following the channel for a while now, you know that I was against the idea of the Bulls signing Lonzo Ball. And it was for the exact reasons you mentioned around it really meaning we would be giving up on Coby and impeding his overall development. I was more in favor of bringing in an older, more experienced veteran point guard who could mentor Coby and pave the way for him as the point guard of the future of this team. I talked about a guy like Kyle Lowry often in the offseason. And yes, to an extent, maybe us Bulls fans have been hyping Lonzo quite a bit, and maybe he hasn't been as good as most people are potentially making him out to be, but what you're not considering, and again, this is coming from someone who was skeptical of the Lonzo Ball signing, but you're not considering all the intangibles and the things that Lonzo Ball does on the court that have made the Bulls so successful, and you've seen the Bulls struggle without these intangibles when Lonzo is not on the court. I'm talking about general awareness and vision on defense, understanding where his man is going, reading screens and switches way ahead of time, being a great perimeter defender, which the Bulls desperately needed, and not something that Coby does very well at. Lonzo's court vision and his ability to see plays well in advance on offense when running in transition is what enabled the Bulls to be one of the best teams in terms of pace before he got injured. Same with their defensive metrics. The Bulls were one of the top defensive teams by rating before Lonzo got injured. Granted, a lot of that also has to do with Caruso being out, but Lonzo is a big part of the Bulls defense that Coby White just simply does not provide. So I get what you're saying, but at the same time, I think the thing that we often overlook, and even I myself overlooked it until Lonzo actually got to Chicago because I wasn't watching him frequently when he was in New Orleans, and that's how impactful he is on defense and his general basketball IQ and court vision. You need players like that who are incredibly smart and aware on the court, even though it may seem like they're not contributing as much because those things don't necessarily show up in the stat sheet. Next, we've got Phoenix Airblade. Things are being set up for a disaster in the playoffs. The losing streak that Brooklyn is going through is going to drop them down to the 7th seed, where we will possibly face them in the first round. With Kevin Durant coming back, vaccine mandates disappearing, and not having true countermeasures for LaMarcus Aldridge and Simmons, we may very well lose in the first round. Well, geez there, Mr. Negative Nancy over here. I have a little faith in this team, right? But look, I mean, I get what you're saying, and yes, that is shaping up to potentially be the case, although Kevin Durant is coming back soon based on his timeline. It sounds like Ben Simmons is nearing a return, so you're probably going to see the Nets rise in the standings, especially with how tight the East race is right now. Like, as of right now, the Nets are sitting 8th in the East, but they're also only 4.5 games back behind the 3 seed. I just find it very unlikely with Kevin Durant coming back and the pieces that the Nets added in that Harden trade that they'll remain in the 7th or 8th spot by the time the season ends. That being said, though, the Bulls could also fall themselves a bit with the injuries that they've had and they're impacting them, although a lot of people thought that that was going to be the case and the Bulls would fall in the standings, but since have risen despite being shorthanded. But if the Bulls fall a bit and the Nets rise, it's still very possible that they could still see each other in the first round, say in a 4-5 matchup. But look, that's not just isolated to the Nets. Like, the Bulls could very well see the Bucks or the Sixers in the first round, depending on how things shake out. Like, there are a number of possibilities in playoff scenarios that it's just way too early to speculate on. And either way, with how strong the Eastern Conference is right now, there is no guarantee that the first round will be a cakewalk for the Bulls, even if they finish as one of the top 2 teams in the East. Next, we've got the Benny. Bulls should not offer LaVine a max contract. Give him the same contract DeRozan had, since they are roughly at the same skill level. This would also allow the Bulls to sign another all-star caliber player. I'm sure Zach would understand and be a team player about it. I actually don't think Zach would understand. I mean, Zach is definitely more of a team player and less selfish than a lot of other stars are in the NBA. It's an admirable character about LaVine, but he's made it pretty clear he wants what he deserves. He's said that multiple times. I'm pretty sure he is not going to accept anything less than the max, and if he doesn't get the max from the Bulls, he knows there are going to be teams around the league that would be willing to pay him the max. So for all intents and purposes, I mean, Zach has really outplayed his current contract and has been taking a discount for the last couple of years. He's going to want to be made whole. Also, you mentioned they should offer Zach what they offered DeMar because they're at the same skill level. Well, it doesn't really work that way. Like, yes, they might be at the same skill level, but DeMar got that 3-year contract at $85 million because he's 32 years old. Like, generally, you don't hand over a long-term guaranteed contract to an older player when it's uncertain how many good years they have left in them. Zach is 26. He's in the peak of his prime, with many years left under his belt. That's why he's going to require more money than someone like DeRozan. And then the final point, even if Zach was okay with taking less, and say he actually does take what DeMar gets, which is not going to happen, the Bulls still wouldn't have enough cap space to sign another all-star. Not when you have the big contracts of LaVine, DeRozan, Lonzo, and Vucevic all making at or more than $20 million a year. Like, you would have to start thinking about moving other pieces like Kobe White or Patrick Williams to create enough cap space to bring a true all-star level player. Anyway, guys, I will end it there for this week. Those were some solid takes, by the way. Don't forget, the Bulls are back in action tomorrow night against the Hawks. I'll have a live chat on the channel for that, as well as on the Discord, so feel free to join that if you're interested. Until then, guys, as always, be sure to subscribe if you're a Bulls fan, as I do post daily Bulls content. Thanks again for tuning in, guys, and I will catch you in the next one.